Hello everyone, Cutting Tool Designer here. Welcome to part 25 of the restoration of the South Bend Heavy 10 lathe. This episode we're going to start on the disassembly of the headstock. There's a couple things that are going to make it a little bit difficult for this particular head, and we'll go over that when we get to it. So we'll start with the disassembly and take it as far as we can go for this episode, and follow up with the next one until we get it completely apart, cleaned up, and then we'll do the reassembly. So hang on one second everyone, and we'll get started. Be right back. Okay, well, here's what we got. I do notice, just to point out, that the back gear seems to drag right in one spot. So I think the cam is a little too far forward because it hits a spot where the meshing is really tight. If I back it off slightly and actually let it push back, now it seems to be in better position. So we'll probably need to adjust this screw over here where there's supposed to be a spring and detent. The other thing that we're going to have an issue with is this back gear, or this drive gear right here, has a housing that's pressed onto the main shaft, and there's no place, and there's a keyway in there too, which isn't that big of a deal, but there's no place to get a gear puller on here. And of course this right here is the locking collar that you can adjust the lash on, so forth. It has a fiber washer in there. I'd like to probably replace that with a thrust bearing like it's in here if I can. I'll have to check to see what size to get to fit this spindle, as thin as possible. So I think the step that we're going to try and take is we're going to go ahead and take the back gear assembly out, and then we're going to take off the bearing nuts so that we can lift the whole assembly out, and hopefully I'll have enough room on the bearing surface to slide it forward maybe and screw this retainer a little further forward so I can get a puller in here to get this off, because it's about right in here is where the end of the shaft actually is, and I think they put this on to extend this out for the collet adapter for the tube to sit in and lock on. So that's going to make it a little bit more difficult to get apart. Go ahead and take the thread protector off for now. I'm going to go ahead and take these other screws out that I had just loosely on here so I didn't lose them. And there's some of these aren't the originals. The button heads are what's supposed to be on there, and there's a couple of socketed cap screws which aren't what's supposed to be on there for the covers. Of course, we already have taken all the covers off. Let me turn the light on so I can see a little better. So what we need to do is flip this around to get at the stuff for the back gear, and this is not light, so as you can see, done a little cleaning up here. Alright, so bring this forward a little bit. There's a pin in here for this eccentric. We'll not have to knock that out. There's a pin here for this handle. It doesn't have to be knocked out yet, but I'm going to go ahead and at least knock it out to be loose. And then at the bottom is this bolt. There should be a spring and a little brass cap in there. So let me grab some tools, see what sizes we need. I know, should have been a little better prepared. We'll need those. This is a square head. What size that is? And that's pretty loose. That might be why that cam is like that. That's a 3/8. Does it fit a 5/16? Yep. Okay, so let's get this nut here out. I think if we're still in the shot or not. See, now that slid forward real easy. So that's a good sign that the spring and stuff's still in here. It's unscrewing pretty easily, so no golding of the threads, which is good. Okay, that's the screw. It's ground flat. Looks like where you see a spring connected to it, but nothing come out. So let's get a little wrench and see if we can get something out of here. See if there is even a spring in here. And that might be part of the problem, because I'm not getting anything out. Oh, there it is, finally. Little spring right there. Okay, so let's set those inside there so we don't lose it. Now there's probably a brass piece in there, hopefully, because it's supposed to sit in the detent, but we'll start taking the rest of this apart to see. Okay, let's get our drivers out. And is there a set screw there? Shouldn't be. I'm not sure what that is. There's a hole there. This is the thin side, or the small side of the pin. Oh, let's see if we can start this pin out. Yep, it came out. I'm just going to slide it back in to retain it gently. We also have this screw. And then there's a nut on top of it. What size is that? 1/2 inch. Loosen that up. Alright, that comes out. That's good. Okay. It actually has a little nipple turned on it there. Okay. Now, what we have to do is get this other pin here, and I just heard something fall. Let me see what it was. Okay, there it was. So there's actually a ball bearing. If you can see there in my fingers, a ball bearing for the detent over here. Alright, so we got that loose. Move some of the stuff out of the way. Of course, I got the bracket back here that holds the reversing gears in place. Take them, put this stuff over here. So now, and I don't know, that's pretty boogered up right there. I'm trying to keep you guys in shot. Let's see if this will loosen up for giggles. That might take a little bit of work. Nope. That's pretty boogered. So we'll have to work on that. We'll get working on that after this is out. So we need to get to this pin right here and knock it through. Let's start it. That come loose pretty easy and fell down underneath. Okay. So that loosened that eccentric up. And it should tap out from the back of this eccentric. It's on there pretty tight. So let's see if we can drive this out now. it loose. Now, this eccentric should come out. There we go. You know, there's really no detent on there at all. There's a little groove right here, probably from where that ball was compressed on. So we'll have to play around with this eccentric especially to set our depth. So there's the eccentric, and now the rest of the shaft should slide out. There we go. Alright, there's a shaft down through here. That's probably just for letting oil go through. This is probably the detent that this rides in, so that it doesn't slide back and forth. And then, of course, we have the pin. Actually, we're going to take that off, put that pin back in, so we keep it together with the handle. And of course, we'll get that stripped down, cleaned up, sanded down, polished up on the handle, repainted before we put it all back together again. So here's then the shaft for the back gear. Set that out. Now this whole gear assembly should come out. And it doesn't look like they had put grease in it, so it looks like they just had oil. Really not any oil in there right now. So we'll get this all degreased, cleaned up, de-rusted. Probably have to grind this slot back out a little bit more, maybe get the Dremel or something so that we can get that screw out. So that's the back gear assembly, and let's get that pin out. There's a bunch of chips down in there too, but get that out. Yay! Lots of chips. So we're going to put that with the eccentric so it stays together. So pin for that pin. You're going to see it's a bit off center, but was probably fitted to the center of this bushing itself. Alright, get these chips out of here. And I think I just stuck one on my finger. Metal cutting chips. Yep, there's one in there somewhere. I think I got it out. Nasty stuff. Still feel it. That's the funny thing about metal chips. You get them in there, even if you get it out, still feel like you got it in there. Alright, so let's flip this back around into a different view. And this is not light. Alright, so now we're going to work on taking the caps off. Now we got to take these off first. See what size they are. That's right size. So that is a 3/16. And I might have to stop to go get this metal chip out. Alright, so get in there. See if I can get it started to loosen up. These are just cover set screws. There's another set of set screws inside that are bolts inside that actually lock into the expansion. There's a piece of brass that goes in there on top of the bearing, slides underneath the bearing, and it has dovetails on it. So when you tighten down on it or loosen it up, you change the tension on the bearing. So we're going to get all these out of here. Do the front and the back. I noticed my bowl gear button is should be a little round piece on the top of it. It's all broke off. It's still usable. A little harder to get hold of. Okay, you can tell these haven't been off for quite some time, so let's hope there wasn't a need for them to have been off too many times. So I know there's really no lash, either axial or radial, with this, so that's good. So hopefully when we get this apart, we won't see too much in the way of scoring. Then the question will be is how far do we want to tear it down, because this bowl gear is pressed on, and you have to set up a configuration to actually get it out. Now let's see, those are actually need a screwdriver for those. See if we get the right one here. These fit. Okay. So these are actually a flathead screw. You need to take these out so that you undo that center piece that sits underneath the bearing sleeve. Because if you try to take this off without undoing that, when you pull up on it, you'll actually ruin your bearing. Yep. And too far for the magnet to pick up. There's a little washer on there, lock washer. Okay, that's interesting. A little lock washer. Might have to turn that upside down. Let's go ahead and get them loosened up, front and back. That one had a little bit of magnetism to it, but it didn't get the washer. Let's try this. That worked. Another screw. Let's see if we can get the washers out that way. Wonder if there's a washer in the rest of them. There is in that one. So there's a little trick for you. Use another magnet on your screwdriver to get parts out. Okay, so the back two had a little lock washer on. Alright. And I don't know about the front. Lift it up here a little bit. There does not appear to be a lock washer in those, so might consider getting a couple of lock washers to fit that. Now, what size is this? That is a 5/16. So let's just break these loose for now. And I haven't taken the cups off yet because this thing is still actually full of oil. And I didn't take the time to drain it yet. So let's break this loose. Okay. And see if we can get in there far enough. There's a bunch of chips and stuff in there. There we go. Just want to get them loose for at the moment. Let's see if we can get this one without tapping on it. Nope. Hope I'm keeping you guys in view here. I'm trying to get a fairly close-up of what I'm doing here. Okay. All right. Let's move this back over a little bit. Make sure we're in the shot. All right. So let's start with the front one. Get these screws out. Now when we take these off, we want to watch because there should be shims underneath here. And these are usually layered shims that you can use to peel off a certain amount to change your compression on the bearings. go ahead and get this one off. And this one off. And then we'll tap these bearing housings lightly to see if we can break them loose. And be careful of the shims that are in there, because we don't want to ruin the shims. We really don't want to make any new ones. Alright. See if I can just give a little pry gently. Let that side to move. Sorry if I'm getting in the way here. There we go. That side. Okay, broke it loose. Alright, so very gently lift up on it. Okay, so there's one shim. This still has the shim stuck to it, so that's good. And there's the bearing assembly. Just like a little bit of a wire or something. I don't think it's a seal of any kind. Okay, so there's your front bearing. 2 pins to locate it. And then the 2 shims. So we'll leave them on there till we go to clean it and then be gentle with them. But again, see, you can see this sliding piece here. And you really, to take this off now, we would have to get this bowl gear off. So that's where we're going to run into a little bit of fun trying to get this assembly apart. Normally, some of these gears on some of these machines, the gear's on the inside and then the tensioner's on the outside. But while we're here, since we're doing that, let's rotate this around. Yeah, it's already loose, but I'm going to loosen it up even some more. So this will be fun to see if we can get in here somehow to get this gear assembly off the shaft, because we have to get that off before we can slide all this off, before we can take the bowl gear off. Alright, so being gentle here. Got it to pry up a little bit. Again, you want to be careful because there's shims underneath here. So nice and easy. Okay. Oh, that one fell off, but that's okay. So there's a shim there. There's a shim there. And these don't appear to be the peelable kind. And that may be because of this bearing adjustment capability here. So when you pull up on, when you screw these up, it spreads these apart. And what that does is it clamps down in here, because you've got a circle here, it clamps down and it spreads it out and spreads it out into the bearing. So that takes your lash out. Okay. So at this point, let's get some of this stuff out of the way. So we're going to try and gently lift this out of here. Gently lift this out. Put those in there. Because I don't want to do anything to hurt these bearings. And I'm just looking to see if this screws forward far enough. It doesn't really screw forward any. No, it's not good. Alright, so we'll have to figure something out. Whether we put some, maybe some shim stock to start with in here, and then put a ratchet strap or something on here to try and turn this. Same time trying to figure out how to hold this in place so it doesn't turn. So we're going to have to work on that. Anyways, let's see if we can lift that up. There we go. That's good. All right. So, bearing turns. I can kind of see a little bit. Oh yeah, there's where the oiler goes up through. So, let's move this out of the way. So here's where the oiler goes through. So we clean some of the oil out and see what the shaft looks like. At least from here, you can see the line where the oiler rode on. I don't see too much in the way of scoring, so I'm thinking our bearings overall, by the looks of it, at least in the front as I turn this, looks pretty darn good. Well, I think we're very fortunate, because I really don't see anything very minor of any kind of scoring in there. And these actually look in really good shape. So I'm wondering if these had probably been changed at one point, but there's really, I don't see too much on the shaft, unless they polished it up again and changed the bearing size. Overall, I think we're in pretty good shape. And get that bearing to go forward. And that's the fiber washer. Okay, so there is space here, so we won't have any if we go with another thrust bearing for the outside. The only thing is it's going to add more width, so we'll have to see how this gear will mesh with the drive gears, the change gears on the back, to see if that will be an issue. Otherwise, we'll need to either make this gear set a little smaller, which I prefer not to, or perhaps we can make this locking collar a little thinner. So we could probably turn some of that off to do that. Oh no, I do have more thread on here. Good. Good, we're good. Now I can probably get in here with a puller. Let me see what I got in the way of puller, and we'll be back. So hang on one second. Alright, here's the funky thing that I did. Maybe I'll zoom in on it here a little bit for you. Move this over a little bit. Interesting. This collar actually has this fiber washer actually has a little pin in it, and it has to sit back in here, just so you know. What I did was I actually just brought it up against the back here and used a screwdriver, tightened this down so that the threads were, not completely snug, and then just started gently, and I mean very gently, tapping it with a hammer like that, and slowly worked it out to where I had some space. And I checked, I only have this puller right at the moment available to me, and there was no way to get that in there. I mean, they'll fit in there kind of now, but just trying to use some ingenuity, find a piece of metal. This is a brake caliper, piston compressor for doing brakes in a car. I have a couple of them. So I got it to where it was just about the width of this, and not quite, so I pounded it in there and it spread it back. I mean, it actually is sliding off. And then what I'm going to do is just tap it off. And there we go. That was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. So this gear is actually in pretty decent shape. And of course you see I put this back on the spindle. So there's the keyway. Take the keyway out. We'll put the gear over here, throw the keyway in there. Now, this thrust locking collar should just spin right off. And there we go. Yes, sir, baby. So here you can see a little counterbore hole, a little brass pin in there, so that fiber washer fits on there. And this is trying to feel a ridge or anything on here. Barely, a little bit, not much. So this must have been replaced at some point. Okay, well, that's interesting. I didn't know that was there. I don't think I even read about it in a book. So that's how I did it, very gently, not normally recommended. So now we should be able to take this spindle back off the housing, and I gently set it back down in there. Now we should be able to slide this bearing out. Okay, so here you can see, and it looks like there was a wick there. We'll want to replace a wick. There's a dovetail cut into that. So there's a dovetail slot on both sides. And this should come off. Boy, it's on there pretty tight. Careful here. Gently, I don't want to mark it up on those threads. Okay. So we have an oil groove down the middle of the bearing. So big oil groove. So lots of oil can get in there. And this is, of course, the hole in the bottom is where the wick goes up through. And there's actually a brass piece that's pounded in over here that sits in like that. So the bearing can't spin either. So that's interesting. So we got two ways of securing the bearing. One is this here will keep it from turning because it's screwed to the top plate, but then also that brass piece at the bottom. Interesting. Pretty cool. So, as you can see then, with the dovetail, it's cut this way and cut that way. Okay, cut two different angles. When you tighten up on this, it spreads the bearing out. So it'll actually, you think it's going to spread it out and make it looser, but in reality what it's doing is it's compressing it into this bore. So you got this bearing and you got that bearing, and if we look inside, real light scoring, not much, some discoloration, but that's probably just from some heat. I don't see any real, run my finger across here, I don't really even feel any grooves in there. See if we can get you in here a little bit, get some light to shine on it. So that I'm extremely pleased with. That the rear bearing is in excellent shape. Now if I clean the shaft off, wow, man, that spindle, I mean, you've got some wear lines on there, but I can't feel them with my fingernail. So there's not one major score line on that bearing surface. You can see the wear, but you can't feel it. I'm hoping that the front will be this way, but we've got to get this bowl gear off to get to it, so we'll have to rig something up, and that'll probably be in the next episode. But while we're at it, let's go ahead and finish taking this apart. So here's our rear thrust bearing, deep groove thrust bearing. Got some rust on the outside, but the inner races are clean. Nothing boogered up on the race other than, you know, a little bit of surface rust. And in here the ball race is clean. So just a little bit of surface rust. It feels not too bad. get it cleaned up and re-oiled, we'll check it again, but that looks like there shouldn't be any issues with that. Now this whole assembly here should just slide off. Oh wow. So they didn't fill this with grease, which is good, I think. Okay, front bearing looks in pretty good shape. And make sure you're still in the shot here. Let's move this stuff over a little bit. So here's the, looks like this back is actually a brass gear. You know, this is a brass gear for the back gears, and it actually acts as the bushing too. And we have oil grooves cut into it. There is some scoring here and there, fairly light. One that's somewhat deep. A couple here towards the front, towards the inside here. But that would be riding on this one, so you can kind of see here. No, that would be riding here, right? Yep. Because this goes through the main bearing. This is the main bearing surface. Okay. So this is the surface here that the back bearing here is on. And actually this is fairly clean. Won't take too much to clean this up by the looks of it. Some degreasing and so forth. And of course I haven't tried to open the oil port. Let's see if this screw works. Yep, it works. Okay. So this has never been greased, or at least it wasn't greased the last time anybody did anything to this. Which, you know, I'm kind of happy about that. I think I'd rather try and use oil for the most part. So now let's get a better look at the rest of the spindle here. Clean it up a little bit. If I had an arbor press, I could do this real easy, and I don't have an arbor press. Okay, so here's the main bearing shaft. Again, there's some light scoring there, but I can barely feel it with my thumb. There's some scoring right in here. So this has definitely some scoring on it. So it probably got some dirt or something there at one time. The front, wow, that is hardly anything on it. Let me see if I can bring it over to this camera and show it to you. So there's the front of the bevel gear, or the step pulley housing, and here's the back. Get it in the frame. You can see scoring. I can feel it on there, but I think we can level that out. Back here, of course, is where the rear bearing goes. It looks like you can see some lines, but you can hardly feel anything. So happy with that. So this bowl gear has to get pressed off of this shaft. This is the spindle shaft. And yeah, if I had a press, we could put this upside down and actually press that shaft out. I don't think I really want to do that. So what we'll do is, and I've seen other people do it, there's a way to rig this up and make your own kind of large puller to pull it off. It really only has to move this far to get off of there. So, and then we can get to the front portion of the shaft. Okay, so with that, we'll wrap it up for this episode until I can get something rigged up for pulling the bowl gear off, and then we'll go from there. So hang on 1 second, we'll be right back. In case you're interested in my overhead rig, there's my little Allstek camera on the end of a eye pole, hooked onto the tripod. Allows me to reach in here, so it's not, I can get in here and work without it being all over the place or bumping into it all the time. And I can adjust it up and down. I can extend the length. Pretty simple. Got that from FastCap with the camera when I bought it. So I've seen other people do similar, but that was a quick and easy way to do it. Be right back. All right, everyone. That's going to end episode 25. Got to get my hands cleaned. Got a lot of cleaning to do on that. We'll get set up in the next episode to get the bowl gear off, and then work on stripping it down, cleaning it up, getting it ready to go back together. So far, I think we're in pretty good shape. Little bit of scoring on that pulley bearing, but not much. I think it's still livable. I definitely do want to get the bowl gear off to check the front bearing and get things all cleaned up and maybe polished up a little bit more before we go back together again. Plus, it gives everybody else a chance to see how this comes apart and goes back together again. So we'll work on that in next episode, and then I don't know what we're going to do after that. Probably maybe the underdrive. Got to get it out yet and start taking it apart while we're getting this all cleaned up and getting it stripped and getting it repainted and ready to go back together again. So this will be the end of episode 25. Stay tuned for episode 26. This is the 18th of June. And coming up this next weekend on the 24th, Saturday the 24th, is a Bar Z Summer Bash. Good news. I have some business out there in the area both before the bash and after the bash. So I'll have a chance to be there this weekend. So for those that are going to be there, hope to see you there. Say hello, and thanks for everybody that subscribes. Thanks for everybody that watches. Really appreciate it. If you want to keep following along, give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe, and you'll get notifications when we bring out another video. So again, appreciate everybody out there. Until next time, everyone, take care.